Hello and welcome to the Total Saints podcast. I'm Martin Starke and I'm joined by our panel of guests to discuss all the action from another interesting week supporting Southampton Football Club. This episode of TSP is streaming live on our Facebook and our Twitter pages, and you'll also find it on our official YouTube channel. So if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, you can get involved in the conversation using the comments section. This week on the podcast, have Saints slipped back into old habits? The results would certainly suggest so. Back-to-back home defeats to Newcastle and Watford were discussed both games. And it's a break from the league next weekend with the visit of Manchester City in the FA Cup, so we'll preview that game. First of all, let me introduce you to this week's TSP guests. Glen de la Cour is the writer of the weekly Saints blog League One -10. I know you won't mind me mentioning because you put this on social media this week, but you missed the games. And if you were 2 games to miss this season, you probably picked the right ones, to be fair.
Yeah.
How is that line looking? Is it still faint?
It's a very, very faint line. There was a horrifying moment when I thought I would actually be able to go today. But luckily the line turned a slight, off pink colour. So I managed to skip it, which became more and more lucky as the game went on, I think. So yeah, I'm feeling fine. A couple of rough days last week, but missing the games though. No, the bottom line is I'd like to have been there. Then of course we'd have won because we never lose when I.
Well, that's the other school of thought is that maybe they thought they could get away with it because you were.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. I think because I wasn't there, they turned in 3 out of 10 performances. But no, I'd like to think that, but no, not the case. Well, barring having the longest stint of COVID ever, I'll be back there for the game next weekend against Manchester City. But yeah, if I could have chosen 2 games to miss, I don't think I could have chosen any more wisely.
I did read a comedian, I think, this week saying that getting COVID this late in the game is like buying a Dreamcast. It's a bit leaving it a bit late.
Well, it hasn't gone away, has it? I know in the news,
no.
Everyone seems to think that Putin's got rid of it, but because that's all they're talking about. But no, it definitely hasn't gone away.
Well, we're glad that you're with us. Ben Stanfield is the founder of the Total Saints podcast, jumping in this week in the absence of Steve and Dan. Do you think they knew what was going to happen, Ben? Is that why they're away this week?
That's the only thing I can think it must be, Martin. Yeah, I mean, I managed to find out that Dan was on the west coast of America, and I thought he was just trying to avoid Alan Saint-Maximin after the Twitter spout the other week. But of course, then Saint-Maximin, as we'll come on to, didn't even turn up at St Mary's either. So they both avoided each other, didn't they? But yeah, it was, as you said last week, a little bit ironic that they were both away at the same time.
Yeah, there we go. I think one of them will be back next week anyway, so they can explain all about that. Also joining us this week is Saints fan and journalist Nick Harris. Welcome, Nick. Great to have you with us this week. What's your earliest Saints memory for those that aren't aware of you and what you do?
Probably the earliest clear memory is the 1976 FA Cup final. I wasn't there. My dad was. He was sitting just behind the Queen in the Royal Box. That's the last FA Cup final the Queen ever saw at Wembley Stadium. She didn't need to see football after that. She'd seen the greatest day in Wembley history. So I remember watching my dad. I had been to the Dell before that. I grew up in Nottingham in the era of Brian Clough's all-conquering Nottingham Forest as a Southampton fan because my dad grew up in Regent's Park, Shirley. So I was already a Saints fan from birth. So yeah, my earliest clear memory was watching the 76 final on telly, and then all the stuff that followed. The day we signed Keegan, so many Latisse memories much later. Shearer, Mick Shannon, standing in car parks in the late 70s and 80s to get the autographs of Nicky Holmes and people like that. So yeah, 76 was the first clear one.
Well, it's great to have you with us. I'm not sure this week is going to go down in history, but we'll get on to that. Welcome to episode 190 of the Total Saints podcast. So lots of talk about bouncing back, seeing a reaction, putting things right, but it all came to nothing, really. A dreadful home defeat to a team in the bottom 3 today. Glen, same as last week, really. Where do we start with this? It was disastrous.
It was very, very poor. We've gone from looking like a team that was playing well enough to push for a Europa League place to looking like a team that the season started a week ago. We'd be thinking we're going to get relegated this year. We've been that bad in the last 2 games. I think today was we'll get onto the Newcastle game. There was a certain amount of inevitability about losing that one, but today we should not have lost to Watford. But we made them look like prime Brazil at times. We just weren't on it. There wasn't enough hard work. There wasn't enough closing down. There was certainly not enough urgency, especially in the second half. And we were lucky to still be in the game at half time, to be honest. To go in 2-1 down was a right result, because honestly, if Watford hadn't butchered a couple of openings that they had, when they seemed to be constantly breaking 4-on-3, and luckily Emmanuel Dennis, who was the striker that I picked out as being the main threat, had a shocker and just kept choosing the wrong pass and all that sort of stuff. So to get to half time just the 2-1 down was reasonable, but the kind of expected cavalry charge in the second half just didn't really materialize. We had a couple of half openings, but never really, for my money, looked like scoring. And and that was it. It was just poor. But you can't give away goals like we've started to give away the last few weeks and expect to win games against anybody. And I think that's been proved both against Newcastle and today.
Vanessa, who's watching on Facebook, says, I also missed today's match due to COVID, and I'm actually slightly relieved as well. So thanks for watching, Vanessa. Thank you for the comment. Ben, what did you make of it all today?
Yeah, I think the word that I've seen around a lot, and I'd written down at the top of my notes here, Martin, frustrating. I agree with what Glen said. It could have been more. I think we were sort of grateful in the end that it was 2-1. I think second half, they had probably more opportunities than we did, and we'd made the right sub at half time. Arguably, that potentially should have been the starting lineup. I know there was a lot of chat after the West Ham game and Hasenhüttl effectively getting it right. Maybe there was questions today about his lineup, which I'm sure we'll come on to, but I thought it was all a bit one-paced. As Glenn said, we never really looked like scoring. I thought we were really sloppy, particularly that first goal, the sort of thing you'll see down Riverside Park a lot on a Sunday morning. And it just felt like they were really casual. It's almost like they turned up thinking, Watford are in the bottom three, we'll be fine. We can go through the motions and we'll get a win here. And it never happened. And, as I say, I think even in the second half, Fraser Forster arguably had more to do than Ben Foster, which was really frustrating, I thought. And as I say, I think that's the word that kind of sums it up.
Ben, who's watching on Facebook, says all the hard work over December, January and February has been undone, and we looked bang average again. Nick, was that a display today just to prove that we are kind of back where we were, and perhaps we got a little bit carried away with the run of good results?
No, I'm going to be a lot more optimistic and glass half full about what's happened this week, because I didn't think we were that terrible against Newcastle, which we'll come on to later. Today, the first half was just abysmal. I mean, Salisu clearly is not quite back on it. He was back on it later in the first half and the second half, but in the 11th minute, he made an error that João Pedro shot free in front of goal, and it was only that great Bednarak block that stopped it being 1-0 then. And then Forster screwed up with his pass, effectively to a player. Salisu played a hospital pass back under hit. That's 1-0. 2-0 defenders, AWOL, Perot was covering the centre because no one else was there, which meant that Hernandez managed to get behind him instead of being in position. So that's, 2-0, it's a disaster. And then obviously the Elanusi goal at half time. So the second half was fine. Yeah, it was a bit meh. It wasn't terrible. We were sort of, again, like against Newcastle, we were wasting chances. But I don't think it sets us back to sort of pre-December. From Boxing Day, the 3-2 at West Ham, when suddenly Southampton have a backbone. Suddenly for the first time in ages, we are coming from behind to win a game. And then throughout the rest of December, January and February, we're seeing certainly the Tottenham game, the 3-2 at Tottenham. That's the best. I don't know about you guys, but that's the best Southampton performance I've seen in 5-6 years, maybe certainly since Koeman era, Pochettino. And I think if you look across the whole piece, this doesn't take us back to where we were. I think there are other reasons about what happened at Newcastle and what happened today. For me, today was hugely about complacency. It was also about Ralph overthinking it again. Will Spaulding probably shouldn't have started. The Newcastle game was a bit complacency and a bit the fact that Newcastle were desperate for the points much more than we were, because we are effectively safe. So no, we're not back to pre-Boxing Day. for my money. Very disappointing. 3 defeats in a row is absolutely terrible. We're not taking our chances. But today was about complacency, as was Newcastle. And I still think there are reasons to be optimistic. 1, we're not in a relegation fight. 2, there's still something to play for this season. Where, chances are we won't beat Man City, but we could. The FA Cup is still alive as a trophy chance. 3, before the Aston Villa defeat, there were some serious suggestions that Manchester United had Ralph on their list. I'm still fully behind Ralph. I think next season, in a non-COVID season, with the ground and his squad and the new owners coming in, that actually, I'm optimistic about next season already. And I think the chances of Ralph going have diminished because we've lost 3 games in a row. So I'm definitely half glass full on that. And 4, we've got the new owners. I'm optimistic to see what they're doing. We're not like the owners, of the 2 clubs involved at Stamford Bridge today and all that sort of malarkey, So no, we're not back to square one. And it's been a bad week, terrible first half today. Mare against Newcastle, and Aston Villa was, I didn't see it, I listened to it. It was a hard listen, but I still see overall there is progress there. That's my take.
Nick, we're not used to this optimism on the podcast.
No, you're learning.
Well, look, I am a Saints fan, so I've been there and I've done it through all the years. But I do think there is something about this group of players. That Tottenham performance, more than anything, made me sort of just very, very hopeful. And what it also told us is the 11 who started that day and then started against Manchester United, which I think now there's a consensus that is our best 11. Although I think there's an interesting debate to be had about Livramento and whether Walker-Peters should be starting on the right and Perot on the left, and we can get into that a bit later if you want. But that 11 is a good 11 when they're all firing. And they're all fit, and they haven't had COVID, and they're not coming back from knock. So on our best day with the best players playing, that's a good team. And I think that's reason for optimism. But we also have to accept that Salisu is going to be out and they're not quickly get back to it. That Brozier might go off the pace for a bit, as he did against Newcastle. That Livramento, he has dropped off markedly in the last half a dozen games compared to, say, the first 10 games of the season. So, yeah, there are reasons for optimism, and I think we should be. I'm not saying we have to focus on that. I'm just saying I prefer to think that there's a lot of good stuff happening from ownership down to pitch level that we can still be optimistic about, despite a terrible set of 3 results that we've just had.
Yeah. And Glen, we've kind of learned not to criticise the team selection, and we had to bite our tongues a bit today. But to start with just one recognised striker against Watford did raise a few eyebrows, didn't it? Perot and Smallbone coming in for Livramento and Brozier.
Yeah, I mean, Brozier's dropped off the last few weeks. He's not looked very lively. Maybe he's just tired. But and after the Newcastle game, when Adam Armstrong actually did okay when he came on, I don't think many people would have been surprised to see Brozier left out this game and Armstrong play. I agree with Nick about Ralph overthinking it, because to put Will Smallbone in the team ahead of Adam Armstrong or even Shane Long was a real left field shout, which must have been based on something seen on the training ground. Now, Will Smallbone, we tried him as a number 6 defensive player. Doesn't work. Too lightweight. We've tried him sort of in that sort of central number 10 role, if you like, just off the main striker. That's never worked before either. And again, it's probably down to physicality. In our system, he only seems to be suitable for playing in the wide positions. So I don't understand the need to try and shoehorn him into the team in that position centrally. The other issue it caused today is that, well, one, he hardly touched the ball in the first half. It just seemed to be chasing it around the whole time. And Che Adams likes to run the channels. And if you're running the channels and you're the only striker, that basically means there's no one in the box. And that seemed to be an issue in the first half. Now, to me, people might think it's harsh to haul him off at half time. But to be honest, and fair play to Ralph for doing that, because he realised he had to do something. To be honest, he could have hauled him off as soon as Watford went ahead, because it was pretty obvious from that point on we were going to need all our sort of attacking resources, if you like, to get back into the game, because we knew how Watford were going to play. They were just going to camp on the edge of their own box and go break us down, because every team knows that we're not great when there's no spacing behind. And so it proved. So yeah, it was a strange team selection, and I will say that Ralph got that wrong at the start, but at least he had it about him to change it at half time, because on one level at least it must have been quite a difficult thing to do.
What did you make of the changes, Ben? Because that was Will Smallbone's first Premier League appearance since December, I think. Did he do enough? Evidence would suggest not. And when we set up, it would have worked okay had we got that first goal. Was that always going to be the key?
Yeah, I think so. I think Will Smallbone is a very honest player. I think he's young. I think we have to remember that. I think he's someone that, as Glen said, I think maybe it was the tactics that let him down today rather than his performance. I totally agree. For me, I was thinking through that 30, 35-minute period, he could easily take him off now and bring on another striker, because it was clear that was the obvious change to make. I just wanted to touch on Brozier, though, actually, because I saw quite a few people saying after the Newcastle game, he had a shocker and things like that. And I think you kind of have to remember with him as well, he is only 20 years old. This is his first season in the Premier League. I think you also have to remember that there's been a lot going on at Chelsea the last few days. I think the Newcastle game was the same day as all the news came out about Chelsea. There's probably a lot going on in his head about where his future lies and things like that as well. So taking him out of the firing line maybe wasn't a bad thing to do, Martin, but I think possibly I would have gone with Adam Armstrong and given him a chance. I think he did well in the cup game the other day, would have given them some energy up front as well. So, yeah, I do think Ralph got it wrong today. We know that he got it right against West Ham. So I suppose that's the life of a manager.
Yeah. And Nick, too many players just having an off day? Is that what we put it down to today? The likes of Romeo and Armstrong, when they're on top of their game, they're unplayable at times. But this week, it's not been a great week for some of them.
Yeah, I mean, Forster, he did make a couple of saves, but in the 14th minute, what is he doing? And then what is Salisu doing? So Forster didn't have a good game. You could go through the team. Stu, because of the way they set up, it was almost like Stu was, I don't know what he was thinking. Right, I now have to play a striking role rather than his normal game where he's like creative and supplying. So obviously he was subpar because he was, things that were being expected of him. I didn't think Oriel had a terrible game, and I was actually quite concerned when he got taken off later that Ralph might end, taking that one more pillar out of the defensive unit might actually let Watford, increase their lead. But yeah, Smallbone wasn't great. Brozier, again, he wasn't great. Yeah, there were subpar performances across the team, and this is the thing: when you've got our best 11, which we generally agree on the pitch, and they're all playing really well, we can do stuff like Tottenham. But when you've got just two or three of them subpar, or we haven't got the 11 out there, and two or three of the others are subpar, we end up with results like Newcastle and today. So yeah, I mean it's frustrating, and I don't know. There's no easy solutions, but I do think there is still hope there that we did have that period of consistency, aside from that Wolves defeat in that run from Boxing Day to the end of February, that sort of give us, that's the best consistency we've had in 3 years under Ralph. So, yeah.
And the other thing I just wanted to touch on as well, Martin, I'm fairly sure that Ralph has said before that Stuart Armstrong can't play 3 games in a week. And to my knowledge, he has played 90 minutes 3 times this week. So yeah. I thought he looked off it today. He is one of our most creative players. You need him to be on top of his game. So has there been a bit of mismanagement with him this week in the desperation to try and get points, arguably? And therefore, it's almost had a knock-on impact with him.
And we've got that international break coming up as well soon, hasn't we? Which is it's never good when he comes back after some time away. Glenn, is it ironic that we just we settled on our best 11, or what we've discussed it at length? We think it's our best 11, and then it was always going to be that a few of them would have subpar games, and we'd struggle.
I think the point Ben made earlier on is about the relative youth of the team. You're always going to get inconsistent performances from young players. So. And you can certainly add Salisu into that as well. He is only 22. He's had he's obviously got a bit of a question mark over him injury-wise. That might be playing on his mind a little bit. And he wasn't great today, but even the players that you think of as being a little bit more experienced, I think Perot's only 23, Walker-Peters is only 24. It's not as if these are 29-year-old, 30-year-old hardened professionals. Romeo's 30, isn't he? So he hasn't got that excuse for not having the greatest of game today. But I can see, and you have to remember as well, we are what we are. We're not a top six side for a reason, and this is one of the reasons, is that we're never going to be consistent over 25 games. The sort of run that a Manchester City or a Liverpool can put together. It's just not feasible to expect that, and that unfortunately goes for the players. It also goes for the manager, and it goes for the whole club, really. Even the fans, sometimes we're really up for it, and sometimes we're just, sometimes it's a little bit flat. So I think you just have to accept that is the way we are, and that is the way it will be sometimes, as it is for most mid-table sides. I mean, I noticed that Aston Villa have gone above us in the table. Now, they've already sacked one manager this season, and after Gerrard's initial bounce, they lost like 4 games in a row, and now they're back to win, picking up points again. I think they lost today, did they, or yesterday? But so there are lots of ups and downs for mid-table sides. But what we've got to guard against now is this going from 3 defeats in a row to 5, 6, 7 defeats in a row, and then you've got a problem. So. And that's the major disappointment about today, because today was supposed to be the day to sort of nip it in the bud and get going again in the right direction. But it didn't happen. So it's got to happen in the next league game, whenever that is.
Any decent performances today, Ben? Any positives to take away from that? I thought Kyle Walker-Peters had another great game.
Yeah, I was trying to think of positives. The one positive I wrote down was that we played badly and lost. If we played well and lost, that would have been pretty depressing. But yeah, he was the only person I could really think of, Martin, that could probably say he was a 7 or 8 out of 10. Ironically, probably the same in Newcastle game as well. It's he's been very consistent the last few weeks. I think he is, going back to Nick's point earlier, for me, despite what happened today, I still think Kyle Walker-Peters and Perot are the more balanced fullbacks at the moment. Livramento was excellent before he got injured, but I think at the moment it's the right move to have Kyle at right back. But yeah, I thought he was good getting forward today. A little bit frustrating maybe that the final ball wasn't there, which is unlike him really. But I thought out of everyone on the pitch today, from a Saints point of view, I thought he was the standout.
And Nick, we've had various discussions on the pod over the last few weeks and months about the defensive partnerships and where the players fit in. What would your take be on Kyle Walker-Peters, Perot, Livramento? How does that work best for you?
Well, I was looking at the stats and the performances after the Newcastle game. So this is not including today. Perot's played 17 games, all competitions this season. And before today, he'd only been involved in 4 defeats, and that was away at Everton, Liverpool, Wolves, and Villa. So he had 77% non-losing, i.e., winning or drawing, and that's not bad. Those are good. Incidentally, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying today is the first time Saints have lost this season in any competition when Kyle Walker-Peters has played right back. Because he'd had 7 losses out of 26 appearances, all competitions this season before today, and they were Wolves at home, Chelsea away, Norwich away, Liverpool away, Arsenal away, Villa away, and Newcastle at home, obviously, the other day. And he played left back in all of those. So I was trying to work out, I was just sort of exploring this issue of where does Livramento fit. Livramento has had 8 losses from 26 games, which is the highest loss rate of any of those 3. And for my money, I agree with Ben. I think Perot is our best left back. And Walker-Peters, certainly since Livramento's gone off the boil after injury, is our best right back. But Kyle Walker-Peters plays really well, really consistently on either flank. But I kind of think our best pairing in terms of fullbacks is Kyle Walker-Peters at the moment at right back and Perot at left back. But obviously Livramento did so well in the early part of the season when, of course, we didn't have a win in 7 games, but he was shining in a team that wasn't getting the results. So that would be, and then centre halves, I think it's pretty obvious. Salisu should be the first name in the team sheet when he's back and recovered, and probably with Bednarek.
Do you think we've rushed Salisu back a bit too quickly, Ben? As fans, we were desperate to see him come back in, weren't we?
I don't think so. I think we needed him back. I think last week at Villa kind of showed the hole that he leaves behind. I think it just shows, doesn't it? You can't be off it in the Premier League against anyone. Anyone that if you're a 4, 5, 6 out of 10, other teams are going to take advantage of that. And yeah, he was poor today. The last hour of the game, he was probably a lot better. But that first half an hour, he's one of those players we know. He's very relaxed on the ball, and sometimes he's too relaxed. Sometimes he takes chances that he shouldn't take and plays out when it's easier to play back and things like that. But I mean, that first goal today, it's just the old school, isn't it? If in doubt, just lump it. And he didn't do that. And everyone makes mistakes. I think we realise that. As we said on the pod before, we haven't got 50, 60, 70 million pound Van Dijks at the back anymore. So you have to realise that that's part of his development. But for me, I think we needed him back, and I'm surprised that he's kind of been involved the way he has the last couple of games. And maybe it does just show that you can't drop out for a few games and then naturally come back in and get up to speed straight away.
And Glenn, should we have got anything out of that? I know there was a penalty shout at the end, wasn't there? And VAR got involved, but there wasn't much in that, really.
Well, it's an interesting one because I'm sure there's been one interpretation of the handball rule over the last couple of years where that probably would have been given as a penalty, because at the end of the day, his arms were up and the ball hit his arm. He was actually facing away the other way. So if he'd been facing towards the ball, I do think it probably would have been given because his arms were up above his head. So it'd be hard to argue that he did it deliberately, but who knows what the rule is these days anyway. I mean, it's one of those ones. I think if they'd said to the referee, go and look at it and then slowed it down, they may well have given it, but they didn't do that. To be honest, we didn't deserve anything out of the game anyway. If we'd been given it, it would have been an absolute travesty. And, so to be honest, I have no problem with that not being given.
Yeah, it would have been very harsh. I mean, he didn't, like you said, he had his back to it. He didn't know where the ball was. It hit him quite high on the arm. It wasn't deliberate. Clearly, it would have been very harsh on Watford.
He'd have to be one of those. He'd have to be some sort of criminal mastermind to work out that I'm going to jump with my arms and not face the ball like this. And
it was one of those days as well, wasn't it? Where I think that was like the 90th minute, and they just kept showing replays, and they were almost like teasing you, and you knew they weren't going to give it because it was one of those days. But yeah, I mean, for me, I didn't think it was a penalty. But as Glenn says, you don't know what a handball penalty is these days anyway. So.
No, that's very true. A couple of comments from Ralph afterwards, Ben. One was not our highest level with the ball and not our highest level against the ball, which kind of like sums up the day, really. But he was also talking about the time wasting from a team like Watford. Is that something we need to get better at? Because the authorities aren't going to stamp down on that, do they? We need to just not get as frustrated.
No, I think the emphasis is on us, Martin. We've allowed them to do that by giving them soft goals. You know what teams are going to do away from home. Newcastle did it the other night. You let them go ahead, they're going to roll around, they're going to take time out of the game. We've done it over the years. Ryan Bertrand was king of doing that for Saints for many a time. So I think it's easy to kind of blame other teams when that happens to you, but actually if you give them the chance to do that, they're gonna take advantage of it. So that's football in this day and age, and we just need to suck that one up, I'm afraid.
Make the most of it. Yeah.
I tell you what though, if I could wish for one thing for next year that referees to do is start booking players for time wasted in the first half. Don't just leave it to the 85th minute. If they're doing it from the 30th minute onwards, then
that's always happened though, Glenn, hasn't it? I mean, goalkeepers, they time waste and then they get a yellow card in the 89th minute or something, as you say. But you're right. You're spot on. There
was a lad who was playing for Northern Ireland who managed to get 2 bookings for time wasting in the first half. And there was hell about it, because how can you send someone off for time wasting in the first half? Well, he deserved it. They were playing for a 0-0 draw from the first minute, and so I would like to see it. I'm not suggesting for a second that it's not a sour grapes thing for what's happened the last couple of days. I'm a boring Martin. He's wandered off, but
I forgot to plug my laptop in.
Oh, that's all right, mate. But I would like to see it because if you think about it, forget Saints for a second. It's supposed to be entertainment. And it ain't entertaining to have players rolling around from the start of the game and only seeing about 50 minutes of actual play or whatever it is. It is something that's frustrating, but it's not going to change anytime soon, as Ben said. But it would be nice if it did.
I tell you what wasn't time wasting was the Brozier injury. I mean, the shot that we got of his eye at the end. I mean, it was bleeding. And tomorrow morning, his face is going to be up like a smashed pumpkin. That looked properly.
we were losing at the time, so it's not exactly going to be time wasted.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
But I mean,
Yeah.
it looked nasty.
Yeah,
We're gonna
Not
need him next
deliberate.
weekend.
Not deliberate, but.
So Sunday's defeat followed a disappointing night at St Mary's with the 2-1 defeat at Newcastle. What was your take of that game, Nick? What did you make of that? Because in isolation, it's not so bad, but maybe today you kind of look at it and go, it's not great when you look at them together.
No, I think Newcastle's goals. I mean, the Bruno goal. I mean, people are talking about a back heel or whatever. That was a mule kick. It was absolutely brilliant, lovely piece of skill, and to get in the position and whatever. It's one of those. It was a crowded box, and then you had Shelvey's delivery for the Wood goal. I mean, Salisu. You could argue that he should have been tracking a bit better, but it wasn't terrible defending. So they scored 2 good goals. And we scored 1. But again, I was looking at the stats afterwards, because while I thought it was a bit of a mere performance from us, the actual possession, I mean, this was surprising when I looked it up. 68% we had possession against 32 for them. Pass success, 84% for us against 69% for them. Shots, 15 shots for Saints, 5 on target, 5 blocked, 4 off target, and obviously Shea hit the woodwork. Whereas Newcastle had 8 shots, 4 on target, 3 blocked, and 1 off target. I mean, it can, in our shots, Stu, Mo had 3 each, and Bruno had 3 for them. Shea and Salisu also had 2 each. So we had shots. So again, it was not taking our chances. It was not being clinical enough. I don't think it was a terrible performance, because the statistics show that we had the possession, we had the shots, we didn't convert them. So I was left thinking, absolutely, we should have won the game, and it was really disappointing we didn't. But I didn't come away from that thinking that was absolutely awful, because I was absolutely sure that we'd get 3 points today and everything would be great again.
Yeah, and there lies the problem. Ben, same result, different feel to the defeat. I mean, I was fuming after the game against Newcastle, but when you look back on it, we had our chances, and as Nick says, it could have gone either way.
Yeah, totally. I think on another day you get at least a draw from that game, and actually I probably thought it'll be fine. As Nick said, we'll win on Sunday against Watford, and actually 3 points out of those 2 games won't be too bad. But I didn't think we played that badly against Newcastle. I think as Glen mentioned, it was sod's law that 2 of their new signings were going to score the goals and that sort of thing. But actually, on another day, I think you get something from that game. I thought there was lots more energy than there was today, and we spoke earlier maybe about the 3 games in 8 days, but I thought the lineup for that game was right. I thought the way that we went about it was right. I just didn't think we had the luck of the bounce, really.
Newcastle definitely came for a draw, didn't they? I think, Glenn, they disrupted the game's rhythm with every opportunity they had, and it felt like the narrative was there that we just weren't going to win. And just talking to some fans before the game, everybody just thought, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. It just felt like we were set up for defeat on Thursday.
It seemed to be all set up for us to lose, but we didn't help ourselves. I mean, Nick mentioned the first goal that we let in. We're 1-0 up. You keep it tight. For me, John Joe Shelvey is a good player, but he's got no pace, and if you close him down, he can't play. And he could have had a bath and changed his kit in the time that he had to put that cross in, because when you look at it, Romeo and Ward-Prowse are just stood there. They just stood there, but they're not stood 3 yards from him. They stood 15 yards from him going, go on, you cross it. And Chris Wood, who hasn't been able to hit a barn door since he signed for Newcastle, I mean, if he could have chosen a scenario, then it's that. And yeah, Salisu probably should have done a bit better, but I find it quite difficult to defend, to go in on Salisu, because to be honest, people always go in on defenders, and I've done it in the past for losing players and whatnot. But if there's no pressure on the ball, it just makes it so much easier for the forwards to line you up, and that was the problem with that goal. I mean, I've developed an irrational hatred for Eddie Howe I think I need help with it. And I've also even more irrational hatred for Jason Tyndall, because he's just like, he's just nothing. I mean,
what did you
Eddie,
refer to him as in your blog? I can't remember now. Can we repeat it or not?
He's little
Maybe not.
lapdog or something. It's just, Eddie gets sacked from Bournemouth or leaves or whatever, and they give Tyndall the job, and he gets sacked within 5 minutes. So that shows what he can do without Eddie Howe. But he's always there in his ear. I can't stand either of them. And Newcastle's sort of management of the game, shall we call it, in the second half was straight out of the Eddie Howe book that he had at Bournemouth for years. So I'm not the biggest fan, and I do. And I think most of what annoys me about him is the fact that he seems to have this Saint Eddie media image. But anyway, enough of my irrational hatred of people. But
not for much longer. I think the way that he's sort of fielding the difficult questions he's now being asked as Newcastle manager. Yeah. I don't think he's particularly handling that well. He was asked today after the match at Stamford Bridge if he had a view on the fact that Saudi Arabia had a mass beheading of 81 people yesterday, and his reply was, "I'm sticking to football." And it's Eddie Howe's a bright bloke. He knows who he's working for, and it's a difficult situation for him to be in, but I don't think that's going to get easier for him. The other thing I would say about the back to the football is Dubravka had a really good game. I mean, I can't remember who he made 4 saves, but one of them wasn't Gordon Banksian, but there was who I can't remember who.
The Stu Armstrong one, was it?
Yeah, the one where he dived to his right and
Salassu's head.
Salassu's header at the end. Yeah.
I thought we did okay, but again, I thought we made it easy for them. We made it easy for them to defend. We didn't try and get round the block that they set up on the edge of their penalty area. We didn't try and go over it. We just funneled everything down the middle, tried to pick our way through. And yes, the stats might have looked good, but I reckon, if you take our very high pass completion rate, most of that would have been in front of 8 Newcastle players.
Yeah.
I
get it.
Yeah, I mean, talking about stats is always a bit of a dangerous one, and I am likely to jump down your throat, because the bottom line is that it's what you do in both penalty areas that matters. What you do in the middle half of the pitch, either side of halfway. At the end of the day, it's propaganda, as Gordon Strachan used to say. Passing the ball around there, great. It's what you do in the boxes. And we created a couple of chances, similar to today. We created a couple of chances in the last couple of minutes against Newcastle, and we did today against Watford. But it's just not enough. There was not enough urgency in either performance for me in the second half.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I think we were complacent to degrees in both games, particularly today. And the last thing I'll say on this is I'm assuming, Glenn, that you're taking no solace from the fact that we were XG winners today.
Give
1.48 versus 1.25.
Well, that's good. How many points do we get for that?
Oh, joy.
In the XG table, I don't know. 3?
Ben, just on the Newcastle game, have teams worked out how to play against us now? We talked about that at Villa. They seem to have a plan. Newcastle certainly did. We couldn't get around them. We were playing a lot of the game in front of them. And to a certain extent, again, today, they were well drilled. Is this going to be a problem now?
I think we've always struggled against teams, Martin, that have come to St Mary's and kind of, I wouldn't say Newcastle sat deep, but ultimately try and encourage us onto them and then exploit or we know from the game against Burnley a few years ago, lumping it up to Chris Wood, we know what teams are going to do. I mean, that's why they've signed him, right? So I don't think that teams have necessarily worked out how to play against us. What I think is that we've just not done ourselves justice the last couple of games. And I think really that's probably the thing that's going to kick the team and kick Ralph over the next couple of weeks while they're mulling it over during the FA Cup ahead of the next Premier League game. So I think, as we said earlier, the positives are that we haven't played as well as we could have in both of those games, and we've lost them. If we played well and lost, it'd be a different thing. But you got to understand, in the Premier League, analysts are watching teams all the time, and even if you change something one week, you'll then have to change it again the following week because teams will be on to you. So I think you just have to be aware that results can change quite quickly. And the point was made earlier, just to finish, is that we are quite streaky under Ralph. We always have been. We win a batch of games, we lose a batch of games, and this just feels like one of those bad periods, unfortunately.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, we get a break from the league now because it's Manchester City in the FA Cup. Don't laugh.
Nice, easy game.
Manchester City in the FA Cup at the weekend. It's going to be on the telly. We had the 0-0 in September, the 1-1 at St Mary's in January. Is this going to be third time lucky, Glenn?
Who for? Well, the good news is that, you know, we've struggled the last 2 games against teams that have sat back, and that's probably the best way to beat us is to sit back, suck us in, and then basically, you know, hit on the brake. You know that Pep won't do that. He won't give a monkeys about what we do. He will. And to be fair, that's what we should have done today. We shouldn't have cared too much about what Watford were going to do. We should have just played our natural game. But and Pep will do that, and they will try and dominate possession, and you know they will have 70% possession, and they will pass the ball 1,000 times, and it's just a case of whether we can hold out, keep the concentration going, same as it always is against them. As far as we're concerned, if we can get to half time still in the game, you know, and by that I mean level, then we'll have a chance in the second half. But the concentration has got to be there. And as we always say, against when you're playing a Manchester City or a Liverpool, you know, one of the absolute elite sides, you can't give them anything. So if we defend anything like we've done in the last 3 games, we've got no chance whatsoever, because they will score. And once they get ahead, it's very, very difficult to get back. I mean, that's been the key to our, you know, getting points against Manchester City this season. We haven't gone behind in either game. So, you know, that's got to be. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, you know, game plan, don't go behind, but that is really the
written
main,
on the whiteboard.
Yeah, that really is the main thing from this game, because once you do go behind and you're chasing the game, which you inevitably would have to do because it's a one-off cup game, then it's very, very difficult. And we've got no way of knowing what team Ralph will put out. We of course have got no way of knowing what team Pep will put out. I can't imagine Ralph will go for, you know, 9 changes again.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, well, you can ask someone else that. But you never know. You never know what's coming. You know, if the ticket price is any indicator, it's kind of halfway between the tenner and the 30 quid. So maybe it'll be 5 changes.
And Nick, what have you made of Man City and their team this season, and how do we go about getting a result on Sunday?
Obviously, they're an absolutely brilliant team. They've got, you know, they've got 50 million pound players in every position, and they're all absolutely brilliant. And on their day, they could rip anybody apart. I mean, we haven't lost to them this season. We have beaten them in recent times. You know, they'll be up for it. They'll play attacking football. They'll pass us to death, and they're absolutely capable of 9-0. You know, I mean, if we play, like you say, if we play anything like we did today in the first half, they will be 5 up at half time, because our defending was shocking and Forster wasn't good either, and it was terrible. So absolutely, they could completely steamroller us. I'll be intrigued to see what Ralph does. I mean, if I, you know, get to next Sunday and look an hour before the match and Willy Caballero is in goal, then God help us. I mean, I know we all thought that before the West Ham game, and then we, you know, the team confounded all our expectations and we ended up winning, and he brought on Stewie and Broja at half time and he managed it well. But it just, I wouldn't have any confidence. This is not a game 3 wins away from winning a first FA Cup from 1976 to be making 9 changes. It just isn't. And if he does that, if he puts Gineppo in the starting lineup and Will Smallbone and Caballero in goal, then I will have the same reaction, and we won't win a second game with 9 changes. It won't happen. Manchester City are just too good for that. So what I really hope will happen is that he goes with the best 11 players. Now, whether he's got the decision over Livramento, does he play Livramento or not? That might depend on his fitness and what he's doing in training. But he's obviously going to play 2 out of 3 of Kyle. He's going to play Kyle Walker-Peters, definitely. Whether he's at left back or right back, we don't know. And then it's Perot. That's one decision. Salisu and Bednarek, you'd hope he plays Forster in goal. I mean, you'd hope so. Obviously, he's going to play Ward-Prowse and Romeo, Stewie, Elanusi, you'd imagine, and then Shea. And then it's down to, can Broja see out of his right eye come next Sunday? Yeah. You know, if he can't, then he needs to play a striker up front. So for me, probably Adam Armstrong. And that's the team I think we should be playing. And then, you know, does he his other option is, does he start the game thinking, right, we need 3 central defenders to try and, you know, mitigate against attacking? And I would think absolutely not. Like, play to our strengths. You know, they're going to come at us. They're going to leave space for us to attack in. You play your best team, and that's what I hope we do. It's no guarantee we'll win. You know, Saints being Saints, we'll get a red card in the third minute, and we'll be 5-0 down at half time, and then we'll be Shane Long will come and get an 89th minute consolation. But for my money, you play your best team, and you say to them, look, you've lost 3 games in a row, but the FA Cup, if you beat Man City in this round, the FA Cup is a live prospect for Southampton. And that's what we want, isn't it? We want to win a trophy.
Yeah.
And so you pick your team accordingly.
So we don't know who he's going to pick, Ben, but is it down to whoever is picked needs to have a great individual performance? That you need to have the game of your life, don't you, on Sunday, if we're going to get anything out of that?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the stats earlier. We've lost more games this week, as in Aston Villa, Newcastle, and today, than Man City have since mid-October. So they've lost 2 games in all competitions since mid-October. So that says a lot. I can see a comment about hoping that City plays a weaker team from Vicknell. I looked at their lineups for all 3 games. Swindon, they beat 4-1. Fulham, they beat 4-1. Peterborough, they beat 2-0. He's played strong sides in all of those. So I don't think we're going to get a weakened side from Pep, because having not won the Carabao Cup, they're obviously in the frame for the Premier League title and the Champions League, but he's going to want to do well in the FA Cup as well. So you're right. And, we said it before we played Man City at home a few weeks ago. We need them to have a bad day and we need to have a great day. We need to have 9 out of 10s and 10 out of 10s pretty much across the team to have any chance. So look, as we know, I mean, there's always a saying about form goes out the cup and the window. Saints have got nothing to lose. I think they've just got to go out there and try and give it everything. If you're 1 or 2-0 down, you still have a go, because there's no real negative to losing 3 or 4-0 by having a good go. What we don't want to do is sort of go out there, be a bit Magnolia, lose 2-0, happy days, shake hands, the game's over, disappear. I'd much rather they went out there. And as Nick rightly says, we did well last year. We got to the semi-final. We didn't do ourselves justice against Leicester City. Go out there and have another chance to get to the semi-final and put it right.
All right, let's do score predictions. I know it's difficult because we don't know who's going to start, and there might be extra time and penalties. Do you want to go first, Ben, and kick us off? How do you see it working out?
I'm not going for 9-0, but I've written down here 2-0 them. I just think our confidence is down a little bit. It's not an ideal opposition, so I'm going to go for I say optimistic, but it's not really. 0-2 Man City. Sorry.
Okay. Glenn, score prediction from you?
1-1 win on penalties.
And Nick, this is the bit where we get it hopelessly wrong. So history tells us whatever we decide and whatever we talk about never happens, never materializes. So how do you see it playing out, Nick? What do you reckon?
Well, I'm very much going down the Ben Stanfield hosting route. As in, I do think if Saints put out the best team and everyone has a 9 and 10 out of 10 game, and they have a 6 out of 10 game, and they only play Jack Grealish and Foden and Kevin De Bruyne instead of other players, then we could nick it 1-0. But I think that we'll be up for the fight and lose 2-1.
Lose 2-1. Okay. Thank you for all your comments tonight, by the way. Mark was quick to point out earlier on when I mentioned the international break for Stuart Armstrong. He says there isn't one for Scotland because they don't have a game.
Very true.
Yeah, Ukraine.
Playing Ukraine. Yeah.
So, so that's good. So that might be something for us anyway. If you've got any predictions, just chuck those into the comments and we can always revisit those again next week. So thanks, Nick. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that.
I did. I really enjoyed my debut. Thanks for having me on. It's a great podcast. Big fan. Listen every week. So been really glad that you invited me.
I promise that we'll invite you back when we've had some better games next time. If that's all right.
Yeah, okay. So maybe around autumn.
Yeah.
I think it's been great. I think we've had more stats on the pod tonight than we have the last 4 years, Nick. So thanks very much. And thanks for being a patron as well. I must say that on behalf of the pod. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. My pleasure. Great podcast.
Before we go, a quick shout out to some of our loyal and much loved patrons. In our Matt Letizia tier, we've got Cole Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Phil Cook, and Nick Higston. In the Francis Benali tier, we've got Nick Reed, Matt Hall, and David Melton, who I think was travelling to his first Saints game today.
Oh, no.
That was what we talked about last week. So our thoughts with David at the moment. Safe trip home. To find out more about becoming a TSP patron and all the benefits that come with that, you can check those out on the website. Thanks again to Ben and to Nick and to Glenn. Don't forget to follow this podcast wherever you're listening. On the socials, it's Total Saints Pod. You'll find us on Twitter and Facebook. You can always email us via the website during the week as well. Thank you for listening. Stay safe and well, and we'll see you next weekend.